This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Hey, Real Talkers, thanks for sharing your, well, maybe it's not your Friday with us. Maybe you're listening to this on a Saturday or a Sunday or even a Monday of the August long weekend, and that's kind of the spirit, that's the premise, that's the context of this very special episode. We want to welcome everybody that's watching our live stream presented by California Closets, but everybody else that's taking us on the road. This is one of the big long weekends of the year. This is the one that potentially you've had circled on your calendar for a long time, so whether you're on your way out to the lake, you've got your paddleboard strapped to the roof of your rig. Maybe you're getting set to welcome a bunch of people over for barbecue. I would imagine, Johnny, of course, featuring Friesen Brothers fine Alberta proteins.
Yeah,
whatever the case may be. I guess I already missed an opportunity in the show to suggest that perhaps people are hitting the highway in their brand new Benzo from our friends at the Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West dealership. We're proud to partner with. The point is we're going to have a lot of fun today. Johnny and I wanted to make sure that we launched you into the long weekend with an episode that would not only help you get up to speed on some of the stories that have really been making news in the headlines lately, but also for those of you that understandably, though it's not our favorite, understandably had a lot on your plate. You've been busy this summer. Maybe you've been in the backwoods hiking, exploring new terrain. Maybe you've been dropping off the kids at summer camp, catching up on your yard work, painting your house, whatever it is. We know you're busy. We know your time is valuable. And so we're proud today. Johnny and I have been spending some time picking what we think were either our most favorite episodes or maybe some of the most significant conversations that we've had on the show over the past month or so, like through the summer. But we're going to dig back a little bit deeper for some of them, and you'll see the ones that we're talking about to get you up to speed on some of the episodes you may have missed. Of course, you can then, if you've got even more time, some downtime this weekend, and you want to get up to speed, check out our archives, our podcast archives, or of course our YouTube channel. Thanks to everybody that subscribes there and watch those interviews in their entirety. This is live streaming or later on demand, the very best of Real Talk.
The very best?
The very best
so
of Real Talk. Yeah,
you're
that's right.
assuming we only get better as we go.
Well, I get nervous when we put out an episode like this because we're going to have other guests that have been on the show recently. They're going to go, I didn't crack your roster of the best, the 10 best. I didn't crack your roster of your favorite episodes. Here's the deal. There's going to be kind of a common theme through this episode. One highlight or short playing into another, and I think that that'll also reiterate something that's a top priority for us, of course, and that is to make sure that we follow up on the conversations that we're having. You know, if we take on an issue or if we attack a headline in one episode, it doesn't mean when that episode ends that the conversation's done. So I think that this will serve to kind of as a reminder as well that that's kind of just the way we operate. Of course, a lot of what we do fueled by your feedback to talk@ryanjesperson.com, and we encourage you to send us an email. Let's jump into this right away. On the 4th of July, we wanted to do an episode, of course, that recognized that significant day for our American neighbors, but also touched on the fact that the relationships, well, you might even say estranged right now. It's a bit of a weird vibe between Canada and the United States, and that continues. I thought, what better way to remind me and you that the relationship is worth saving than to welcome a family member of mine, my cousin Philip in this case, live from his home just outside Los Angeles. And of course, Philip could not ignore what's happening down there with ICE. If you've got an Instagram account, if you're on TikTok, if you're paying attention to cable news, you've no doubt seen these arrests that are happening. I saw an Iranian doctor had his car window smashed in the other day. He's got his toddler in the back, dropping the little one off at daycare. ICE agents, of course, dragging him out of his car. I mean, it's horrendous. It's ridiculous. And my cousin Philip, who's not exactly the loudest Trump critic, he gets into that in the full interview on the 4th of July, told us firsthand what he's seeing.
That's a huge issue here. Los Angeles, the biggest Hispanic community in the United States. My hometown of Pasadena, it is happening left and right. ICE agents hiding and popping out at people and arresting people, chasing people on the street. It is a really frightening situation. They're kind of bounty hunters. They get paid per immigrant that they detain. They're out there hunting. These guys are masked. They're riding around in rental cars. So it's a really wild time. People are scared. People aren't showing up to work. People aren't showing up to the restaurants, our farm industry. Strawberries rotting out in the middle of the fields because there's no one out there to pick them. We don't have the workers. It's very unnerving, and it's having a huge effect in Los Angeles. It's not the right path for whatever they're looking to accomplish.
It's a wild scenario. I saw just like 30 minutes before we're doing this episode here on the 1st of August. I mean, this is something that's been happening over the course of weeks and months. ICE agents stopping humanitarian workers and dragging one of them out of the SUV that they were traveling in. This is tough to watch.
And it's crazy. It's not just, and I know the short kind of alludes to that because that's what your family member hit on. But these aren't just people who pick strawberries. These are doctors, lawyers, physicians, people of all stripes who are being, and let's just say not all of them are being, taken out of the country. But even to have someone burst into your place of work and embarrass you like that simply because, you have a green card or you look a certain way or somebody. A lot of tip-offs going on right now down in the States.
People are getting ratted out.
Yeah, narked on. And then it turns out, hey, they are actually, maybe they were even born there, right? But it's just a sad scene in the
no kidding.
States.
That was our episode on July 4th. You mentioned the agricultural implications. Philip was telling us what he's seeing around it. By the way, he also talks about the impact that huge fire had on his family, his parents' house, his childhood home burned to the ground. Really an interesting episode. We kept him around for a while. He works directly, by the way, with like Kelly Ripa and big TV stars.
Oh, really?
He told some stories there too. I remember about his advocate. Anyway, a really interesting interview. Always fun when you can get a family member on. But the ag implications of the ICE raids, too. They've got a lot of people that are integral, like a lot of workers. And by the way, the story's the same, not necessarily in the context of the ICE raids, but when it comes to the temporary foreign worker conversation in Canada, if you're having a tough time attracting temporary foreign workers or there's political pushback on that, in the case of California and other ag-producing states, I mean, California's economy is like the 5th biggest economy on planet Earth. He was saying that there's berries and fruit rotting in the fields because these workers that have been integral to harvest over many, many years are not showing up to work because they don't want to wind up in handcuffs. They don't want to be deported. They don't want to be pulled away from their families. So that's a huge story that we continue to follow.
And it's something Canadians should look at because we're having the same conversation here in Canada. I mean, people are pressing our prime minister and they're pressing the other guy, Pierre Poilievre, whose pretty much slogan is, we have too much immigration. We have mass immigration. We need to cut down. We need to help housing. Well, I just don't really see not just me, people don't see how are we going to do, number one, Carney's plan to build all these homes in a specific amount of time. Pierre is on the same platform. He wants to build homes and get people into affordable homes. How are we going to get these workers that we don't have into the country when they're scared that U.S., Canada, North America in general is not looking at them very well right now?
Yeah,
they want to remove them, not bring them in, right? And we need them to build homes.
Yeah, I'll remind people as well. Here's a classic example of how I screw myself with an episode like this. On July 28th, very recently, we talked to Sabine Benoit. She's been a top senior political advisor to 2 different immigration ministers, federal immigration ministers in Canada. She touches on that. She touches on what the Carney government's doing with immigration. She touches on what the Harper government did with immigration. Though it didn't crack our best stuff. No offense to Sabine, it's not that. We just had very stringent standards, and we want to kind of keep the theme going here. So how does Canada improve its relationship with the United States? We know it's integral to trade. A big part of that, a huge priority for the American president, Donald Trump, has been Canada's investment in its military. Canada meeting its commitment when it comes to NATO, to that alliance. Mark Carney says Canada is going to do it, and he's made that commitment. It's about a $60 billion commitment, which means this federal government is going to have to find ways to spend more. It could mean cutting other programs. It could mean taxing you more. We asked well-known economist Todd Hirsch on the 7th of July where Canada's going to find that extra $60 billion.
$50 billion represents about a 10% increase in everything that Ottawa spends at the moment. So it is a sizable increase in government spending. Canadians understand the need to do this. We have not been a good NATO participant. The world in 2025, unfortunately, is a different world than it was in 1995 when spending on military maybe didn't seem as important. You could completely get rid of the CBC, and maybe that's a conversation people, should be having. I'm not in favor of it, but I understand the rationale. You could get rid of that. That gets you $1 billion, a little more, of the $50 billion that you need. So let's keep cutting. You could get rid of the entire Canada Parks National Park system.
Right.
I don't think anyone wants that to happen. That gets you about another $500 million. You could get rid of Canada Post. You could get rid of all the judiciary. You could get rid of the correctional institutions. For one thing, it's very foolish to think that we're even going to do that. And none of this moves the needle that much. A 1% cut to everything, no exceptions. Everyone is going to share some of the pain, including seniors, including have-not provinces, including territories. That gets us about $5 billion of the 50 we need. I hate the idea of piling on more debt. I hate the idea of, having to pay more in taxes, even if it's money that's already owed. And I really don't want cuts to my mother's old age security or Alberta's Canada Health Trans. I don't want any of this. No one wants any of this. But we have to be pragmatic. This is the world we're in.
Yeah, and a real perspective check there. So when we're talking 50 billion, 60 billion, he's talking about the 50 billion increase in annual spending. And we had really interesting feedback from real talkers when he talks about a 1% cut across the board. We heard from people on fixed incomes. We heard from people that tap into government programs that are incredibly important. We talked to people, we heard from a post-secondary student. We heard from retirees, all of them in their emails making compelling cases why their programs or their benefits shouldn't be cut. And it kind of struck me a little bit like Todd was proposing almost a tough love type scenario there. He goes, if you're going to cut one program by 1%, you got to cut them all. And if you're cutting every single one of them, that's about as equitable or as quote unquote fair as it can be.
And we all take a bit of that pain.
Yeah.
We all take a bit of that pain. But I would argue that you kind of have to go through things because I don't want to say that some are more important than others. But I mean, I would push seniors up to the top, before like the, not that I want to see the CBC gone, but I would push them ahead of CBC and TV and media and stuff like that. So, but I understand that, the fair way would be just take a rip from everyone, take a slice from everyone.
Yeah. Kind of interesting too, though, when he paints the picture and he goes, let's say, Pierre Poilievre gets what he wants, or at least what he says he wants. And let's say that they defund the CBC. That doesn't get you $50 billion.
No.
It gets you like $1.5 billion or whatever he said. So, I mean, it just goes to show. He goes, of course he's saying this, with tongue in cheek. He goes, you could defund the judiciary. You could defund, you could cut all, he did a remarkable job, I think Todd did, of reiterating to us the mountain, and this might be the most obvious thing I've said in a long time, but the mountain of action you'd need to take to find $50 billion.
It's too much.
It's a massive amount, but it's maybe a perspective check that Canadians need. When you talk about, again, Trump wants that 2% of GDP spending on NATO, but ultimately Carney's saying they got to get it to 5%, and that's the number that we're talking about there.
It feels to me like we're going to spend some money. It's what's going to happen. We're not going to be able to find all this money. And especially when I know he was just joking. He doesn't think, we're going to cut back on budgets to jails. And where are we going to let out a bunch of criminals?
Yeah.
People who support what we're talking about would not like that. But if you want to hear, I just wanted to cue back to the CBC thing. We had a lengthy conversation yesterday about all the quality programming a couple
days ago. That was on the 30th.
Yeah, that's right. CBC is putting out, and we had a lot of comments on whether those were, things that Canadians enjoy or would miss. So
Yeah.
go back and check that out.
I actually really enjoyed that. We were just running with it, and Real Talkers in our live chat. Shout out to you guys, powered by Park Power. By the way, exclusive savings on internet, electricity, and natural gas.
Ooh.
Yeah, at parkpower.ca/Real Talk. But we ran away with it in a really fun way on the back half of our July 30th episode. Everybody talking about their favorite Canadian television, not just CBC, their favorite Canadian television show of all time.
Yeah.
And it was like did wonders for me because a lot of them, like the polka dot door is a classic example.
We threw back.
I'd kind of I didn't forget about it, but I hadn't thought about the polka dot door. But as soon as somebody said it, the theme song started playing in my brain. The polka dot door. I was like, oh my gosh, amazing. For what it's worth, my personal vote, Trailer Park Boys. Doesn't
Well,
get any better than that.
Mine would be, well, Schitt's Creek's got to be up there, but I can't.
So
I
good.
can't wait for the protests if this actually starts. Cuts to the CBC. You'll see guys with signs. Pierre Poilievre does not support Schitt's Creek or Letterkenny or
that's what they'll do.
what
They'll
have
get
you.
all the big Canadian television personalities from the CBC
Oh,
out
yeah.
speaking at these rallies. Another angle on Canada's military, and to credit the Trump White House on something, Canadians probably, the average Canadian, hasn't really thought about or evaluated the importance of that NATO alliance, the importance of Canada being a member of that alliance. This isn't just to serve Donald Trump's purposes or to meet his priorities. NATO membership means that an attack on the sovereignty of one NATO member is an attack on the sovereignty of all, right? So if Canada were to find itself in an unenviable and quite frankly unimaginable circumstance where the United States were to become more hostile to Canada, it's not going to happen. But if it ever did, you've got the back of, a number of other NATO members. I think it's reiterated the importance of that. It's also got us talking about our military more than we have, probably, the average person. I'm not talking to the brave and incredible men and women that serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. And then there was that headline out of Quebec. You remember this? The RCMP laying terrorism charges against 4 men in Quebec, 2 of them active duty members who had, in layperson's terms, basically stolen a bunch of firepower. They'd stolen thousands of rounds of ammunition, and they had a goal of stealing territory and establishing some sort of a sovereign entity. Well, Canada's National Police Force intervening, laying those charges, and of course our first call was Dr. Andy Knight. He's the one that was tapped on the shoulder by the Canadian forces to do a study and ultimately to issue a report on extremism and white supremacy in the Canadian Armed Forces. The report, just under 50 pages. He got into it with us, and here's one of the most important things that Dr. Knight had to say.
There is a problem within the military. This is not about the military as an institution per se. The majority of people in the military serve Canada very well, but it certainly is there. Part of that problem is a lack of diversity. 90% of the Canadian military is white male. Many of these individuals believe in the sort of virile European white male masculinity. And this is something that resonates, I think, with a lot of what I call white Christian nationalist ideology. Some individuals actually said to us directly that they joined the military to learn the skills that the military has to offer. And one individual even said that he wanted to learn how to kill brown and black people. Now, that was very, very concerning. And when I spoke to leaders in DND and to some of the Canadian Armed Force leadership, they said they know that there are some people that come into the military with those kind of nefarious intents. They want to be able to know the tactical skills that you learn from the military. They want to learn how to utilize weapons, obviously, and the kinds of ammunition that you need to utilize in any sort of race war. The military is a perfect place to learn those skills and then apply those skills in your actual attempt to take over. That says something about the nature of the institution itself. And maybe we need to change that by bringing in more individuals, diverse characters, diverse ideologies, diverse ways of thinking. We need to sort of maybe expand the military in that way. And we need to have an expansion of our military given the threats that are coming from the South, from the United States in particular.
That was our conversation with University of Alberta political scientist and distinguished professor, Dr. Andy Knight. That was on the distinguished professor. We actually start the interview in somewhat cheeky fashion before we get to the serious stuff. And he clarified for us how you earn the distinguished ahead of your title. That interview didn't land well with everybody, to say the very least. To me, oftentimes that's a sign of a great interview. Not everything that we hear should be easy to digest. Not everything that we hear should settle in nicely as we go in along our way. We did hear from people of faith that didn't appreciate his comments on Christian nationalism. Of course, he clarifies. He says he's not talking about white Christians. He says he's talking about that ideology. Really solid interview from start to finish. That was on the 22nd of July, if you want to check that out, with Dr. Andy Knight. More, speaking of Pierre Poilievre, on him and other looming elections coming up in just a quick second. But before we get there, I want to remind you how proud we are to partner with Edify Edmonton. They do such a great job telling the stories of the Metro Edmonton region. And of course, it doesn't hurt that in this past issue, they featured our very own Johnny Infamous. Hey! And one of your favorite spots to hang out at Double Dragon. You can check them out at edifyedmonton.com, or of course, pick up a paper copy wherever you find it. This is their Favorite Things Edmonton feature. They do it annually, where they check in with recognizable Edmontonians, like Edmonton's best DJ, the intrepid technical director of this show. And they talk about where they love to recreate, where they love to eat. How about this one from Omar Farah from the Farah Kitchen, who talks about Swiss Donair. You know, that's a tough competition. Best Donair in Alberta. Are you kidding me? A lot of good shops.
I mean, I love it, but it's oversaturated in Edmonton. You can't go anywhere and not get a Donair.
You're saying it like it's a bad thing.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying it's incredible how many, every corner of the city.
It's amazing. We got Donair shops and liquor stores. That's what we got. Lieutenant Governor Salma Lakhani talks about her favorite place to be. I love her choice. Symphony Under the Sky at Snow Valley. Great choice there from her honor, the Lieutenant Governor, and more. If you go to their website, I'm going to scroll right up to the top there at edifyedmonton.com. You can also check out their Unfiltered podcast. I'm thrilled to be joining them. I think it's August 5th, Tuesday. They're releasing their next episode. It's Dave Cornwaya and myself, with Edify's editor-in-chief Omar Mualim, breaking down Edmonton's mayoral race to this point. Hey, if you're sticking around through the August long weekend and you'd love to swing the sticks, may I humbly recommend that you go to theranchgolf.com and book a tee time at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. This golf course, my home course, is consistently rated as one of Alberta's premier public golf courses, right on the outskirts of Edmonton. It's literally 20 minutes from downtown. A fun, laid-back, and accommodating public golf course. It's been ranked in the top 100 courses in the country. More recently, Score Golf magazine rated the Ranch as the course that offers the best value in Edmonton, second best value in Alberta, and 30th best value in the country. It's always in great condition. Their tournaments are second to none, including the Real Talk Golf Classic. If you're booking a tournament for your nonprofit or your company, make sure you check in with Murray, Adam, and the team at The Ranch. And if you're going to be barbecuing or hosting this weekend, make sure you check in at your local Friesen Brothers. They're celebrating 70 years this year in 2025. Unbelievable. And by the way, Johnny, they have just been named breaking news. Friesen Brothers. I'm so proud of them. I don't work there, but I am the voice of Friesen Brothers, and this is where we buy our food. I mean, I love this place. Forbes magazine. Real Talkers, you may have heard of Forbes. Forbes magazine has just named Friesen Brothers one of Canada's top 150 employers.
Amazing.
How incredible is that? So if you're looking to join this team, you can get in touch with them. You can contact them on their website. Again, that's Friesen.com, Freson.com. Oh, and by the way, it's August 1st today. If you're going to be hitting up a Friesen Brothers, don't forget 15% off all purchases over $75. Absolutely fantastic. A big shout out to our friends. They feel like family at Friesen Brothers. Well, we are now 17 days away. If you're listening to this on the 1st of August, if you're listening to it later on demand, we're even sooner to that by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. We talked to Alberta Chambers President and CEO Shauna Feth a couple of episodes ago. She was moderating that forum.
She was?
In Tamro. She was the moderator.
I totally forgot she said that yesterday.
Well, I mean, we were talking about a lot. We were talking about hydrogen. We talked about that Pacific Northwest Economic Summit, a whole bunch of stuff. But Shauna was moderating that candidates forum featuring, and I hate to put it this way, but like, let's cut the shit, featuring Pierre Poilievre. He's the highest profile candidate by 1,000 miles.
Oh, yeah.
But he's not the only candidate. Of course, Poilievre has to win this by-election, and that seat vacated by Damien Couric, the Conservative incumbent. Poilievre's like probably going to win, but it's not guaranteed that he's going to win. The longest ballot committee, they're up to their typical shenanigans. I think it's, what is it now, Johnny? 210 candidates or something on that ballot?
I think it's 4,000.
Yeah,
it's
I haven't
lot.
checked in the last 40 minutes.
It's the most ever. Just know that.
It's the most in Canadian history. They're trying to get everybody's attention when it comes to electoral reform. But get this, Couric won in the most recent federal election just a short time ago with 83% of the vote. It's one of the highest margins of victory in that election. Max Fawcett argues with us on the 8th of July in a full episode that if Pierre Poilievre doesn't just win, but if Pierre Poilievre doesn't win by a landslide, it could really hurt his future as the leader of Canada's Conservatives. It's an uphill climb, to say the least. I don't think that Pierre Poilievre is at any risk, and I want to respect the voters in that constituency, and obviously they can rally, and maybe crazier things have happened, although that would be one of the craziest all-time upsets in Canadian history. But Poilievre's not at risk of losing that by-election, I don't think. But do you actually think that he could be at risk of seeing his tenure as Conservative leader end before the next federal election?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
And I don't think that, I mean, you're right. I think the odds of Bonnie Critchley actually beating him are
very slim,
very low, very slow. I think the odds of her ending his political career are much higher.
Really?
Because if let's just say he gets 55% of the vote or 60% of the vote, people are going to point out that that is 20% less than a backbench MP who had to step aside for him. If he can't do better than Damien Couric in that riding, he is a loser. And that will be the frame that a lot of Conservatives look at it through. So if Bonnie Critchley can, get a campaign where she gets 20-25% of the vote, that's ball game for Poilievre, I think. The rumor, it's not going to happen right away, but the whispers are going to start. People are going to start organizing behind the scenes. And he's going to have a real problem on his hands.
Now, I don't like to talk like this when it comes to an election, but I guess we may reverse the title of this episode. This might turn into the Cut the Shit episode. Let's cut the shit on this one. This is an election. Respectfully to all candidates, respectfully, the two most well-known names in this by-election are Pierre Poilievre and Bonnie Critchley.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to put my neck out there. I'm going to stick my neck out there and suggest that may have something to do with our exclusive with Bonnie Critchley. That was back on the 9th of July. Now, everybody's heard from her now. Our episode has more than 8 million interactions. When you look at our TikTok, our
Views,
Instagram, our YouTube, our podcast
thousands
downloads, and
of
the
comments.
like. She was on CBC National after she talked to us. Other podcasts have reached out to her after she talked to us. And Bonnie, she shot straight. Right? She says, this is our home. This is our riding. And she argued that her fellow Conservatives shouldn't just give this one to, quote, the angry guy from Ottawa.
My neighbors are choked. They voted for this guy and he ran away. He abandoned his duty to them.
You're kind of trying to convince longtime Conservative voters to vote against the party they've always voted for. Do you think that they're mad enough to vote against the Conservatives for an independent candidate?
Absolutely. And I'm not the one who's saying that. It's all of our neighbors who are saying that. People are choked. Couric sold us out to the angry guy from Ottawa. For us to have an election and then promptly have to go back another $2 million by-election because the guy we just voted in, who asked us for a mandate, suddenly turns around and says, no, I don't think so. Vote this guy in instead. It didn't sit right with me. And I'm like, I looked around, said somebody should do something about it. So I looked at what was happening when Mr. Couric stepped down and said, that's not right. So I stood up. Victory for me is eating enough of his numbers that he's done. It's that simple.
So that was like, it's to let people know that's actually one of our most viewed, most listened to episodes of all time. I don't know if that was my expectation heading into it, but I think it was her. You know, she's a military veteran. She's a rancher. You know, the videos, her campaign videos, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not seeing the images on YouTube, she's like throwing bales around and changing tires. And I think she just had that no nonsense, salt of the earth approach, regardless of how the results look on the 19th of August, the day after that by-election. I don't think anybody's going to forget Bonnie Critchley anytime soon.
There's all these hashtags going around ever since she was on our show. Like NOBSBC, no BS, Bonnie Critchley.
Oh, is that right?
And I can't say the other one because it's BMF-BC, which is bad. Well, we can swear
say
on
bad
this show,
motherfucker.
can't
Yeah,
we?
you can. I mean,
where have I been?
Although we have
Bad motherfucker.
we are
Like,
presenting this as a road trip episode. Now people are going to go, our kids are in the back seat. Our kids are in the back.
The reason I hesitate is because I don't know how much she appreciates.
She may not love that.
All this, like, you know, kind of, you know, inflaming her personality as a character. Because I went back, and that's funny because I watched some of the debate, and that's not what she's about. She explicitly says several times throughout the debate, this is not about me. This is not about me standing on a soapbox. This is not about me rising to fame or character. This is about you. And she points at the crowd. This is about where we live. This is about us representing us. And this guy from Ottawa doesn't. And another thing that was funny about that debate, and I'm sure next week we'll play some clips because there was just solid gold through the whole thing, but we had a busy week this week, was one of the, even like most people on there, other than Bonnie and another person sitting next to her, were pretty much alluding to the fact that this is Pierre Poilievre's election to lose. The guy right next to him. Of
course it is.
When they have their final point and everyone gets to stand up and get their last 60 or 90 seconds, he literally started by saying, I think we all know this is Pierre's race to lose.
Yeah.
He's sitting right next to him.
Well, I mean, it's
He's
obvious.
running against him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is the bottom point of this, is that I think Max is right. If she comes and, I mean, what did we think before she came on the show? She'd get 50 votes? If she gets 3,000, if she gets 10,000, it'll be absolutely crushing for him.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, I mean, so then what does victory look like for Pierre Poilievre? Like, if Damien Couric gets 83% in the federal election and Poilievre gets 75%, it's a tough look for him. But then you're saying, well, he's got to get 85 plus, 90% of the vote. That's wild. And with 210 candidates or whatever the absurd number is right now, here's a development, you know, I mean, this is an interesting one since the longest ballot committee up to their shenanigans, you know, entering all these candidates. And we've had wonderful suggestions from you, Real Talkers, on how you can stop this tomfoolery. Do we need maybe, you know, they have election agents, right? Like you got to have an election agent sort of signing and submitting your papers. Some of these candidates, you know, dozens of them have the same election agent. Some of you have said you got to stop that. Maybe one person can only represent up to 5 candidates. Maybe there needs to be a $1,500 or $2,000 or $5,000 entry fee to show that you can fundraise. Maybe you've got to go get 1,500 or 2,000 or 5,000 signatures. Now, of course, the trade-off to this is you don't want to make democracy inaccessible to people. You want to encourage the average citizen to feel like they can participate in democracy, including running as a candidate. So you don't have too many barriers in the way. But as it stands right now, maybe there aren't enough. Bonnie actually issued an open letter on her website, BonnieCritchleyIndependent.com. She says her open letter to the longest ballot committee. And she makes the argument, and I think that it's a valid one, that this thing, you know, this situation with more than 200 candidates hurts her way more than it hurts Pierre Poilievre.
Even back to this debate again, would have been nice to see her, him, and maybe 1 or 2 other people. When there's 9, it's like you're waiting the whole time. Like she was second in the line and he was like 7th. So the whole time you're just waiting for them to go back and forth. And it kind of, exactly like Shet, it muddied the waters when there's 5 other people in between talking. One thing I will say, and I'll give credit to Pierre because it sounds like I'm just kind of dousing on him. He's very popular. During this debate, anytime he talked, it was like you couldn't see the crowd, but standing ovation. They're clamoring to everything he says. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're applauding every time he makes a point. The only other person who got anywhere near that was Bonnie Critchley out of all the candidates. So.
Yeah, well, and then there's people saying, well, Poilievre bust in a bunch of supporters from outside the riding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would also say welcome to politics. That's gamesmanship.
You need to show
That's
up.
how you do it. That's how you win. Of course, we'll have follow-up coverage on this, including a special episode. We have one of our 2 guests confirmed for the 19th of August, but I'm not saying anything until we've got both of the ones that we want. But you can keep it locked right here on Real Talk for more on that. We're proud, obviously, when we secure exclusives, when we're the first to tell you about a political story, and that includes the 2nd of July, when 2 MLAs, former minister Pete Guthrie and Scott Sinclair, he's out of Lesser Slave Lake, they'd both been booted out of the UCP caucus, told us first on Real Talk that they were reviving the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta. Now, there's been an interesting development since this interview, and we're going to play a longer highlight for you here because I think that this one deserves us sinking our teeth into when you're talking about the future of conservative politics or the future of politics, period, in Alberta, our home province. This deserves our attention. Here, the 2 MLAs, formerly of the UCP, explain why they think Alberta needs another conservative option.
The discussion of separation, firing of the entire board and executives of AIMCO, all of these things are very disruptive. And what do? They create uncertainty. And much of this is not well thought out and planned. There's not a plan and a design in place. They didn't put together a business plan. Typically the way this government operates is to just, go out, fire everybody, have a loose sort of idea on where they want to go, blow things up, let the dust settle, and then try to figure out how to get across the crater. Danielle Smith, what she does is it depends upon the room that she's in, the position that she'll take. And she knows that publicly she needs to take the position supporting Canada because, let's say 75% of Albertans, they support Canada. I think if a referendum were held, I think it would be somewhere around 25%, plus or minus a few percentage points. But if you look at Danielle Smith's actions, she ran on the Free Alberta strategy. She introduced the Sovereignty Act. During the federal election, she inserted herself into that election and tried to put herself in the media virtually every week, sort of one-upping Pierre Poilievre and the CPC. Scott stands up and says that, look, I got a problem with this budget and the way that we're spending our money. I stand up and I say, hey, I'm not happy with the transparency here and the lack of accountability. And both of us were unceremoniously removed from the party. So I think for the colleagues within the party and themselves, if they speak out, they are going to be dealt with. There's going to be severe consequences anyway for their actions.
The stance that both former Minister Guthrie and I took were on principle and on values that we think a lot of Albertans are missing right now. And we've seen a swelling of support, and we believe we've woken a sleeping giant of people that don't feel like they have a home politically right now. And we believe that rebooting the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta is really going to ignite a large amount of the population who are looking for a new voice and a new vision of a party that's maybe just balanced, normal, and takes care of things that I would say a bigger snapshot of Albertans care about. People are going to hold the Premier accountable for morphing the party from what was supposed to be a mainstream big tent party into a separatist party. And those are going to be election issues that are going to be very difficult to recover from. And we're going to be able to provide people with, I think, a very comfortable option with a name that has credibility, with 2 MLAs to start, that have reputations that I believe are reputable, are solid in their constituencies, and represent a lot more mainstream Albertans.
Ms. KD is wondering if you think that the premier will call an election before you can organize. If I know anything about Danielle Smith, I will say this respectfully to you both. I don't think that she's going to sweat this out of the gates. I think she'll probably laugh it off. I think she's enjoying popular support. I think her government's enjoying a budget surplus. I don't think that there's any reason for her to sweat that, but I do think that there could be other contributing factors to an early election call.
As far as calling an early election, I think she would be crazy to call a snap election, which maybe that's why she will call it.
You talk about when you step down as minister. I've not heard you on the record at length getting into what prompted that decision.
As Minister of Infrastructure, I just started to see some weaknesses in our policy and procurement. And so I introduced Bill 13 to help with transparency. I presented that to the Premier and her team, and I felt like it was going to be introduced. And then, so the weeks and the months went by, and I realized, yeah, they're not introducing this. And at the same time, I started to hear about what was going on behind the scenes at AHS. And I started to get dribs and drabs, and then
like who are you hearing that from?
Well, I don't want to say where it was coming from, but it was coming from multiple sources.
People within the party, elected officials, people with credibility. You're not getting DMs on Twitter from nameless accounts.
No. It was credible information that's coming to me. So I started to hear bits and pieces, and you start pulling on threads, and then suddenly it gets wider and wider, and I kind of started to understand why it was that they did want to implement the Financial Oversight Committee.
And you start to worry about your own ass.
Well, I'm more so worried about the government. This isn't what I signed up for.
Dubious says these two were happily aboard the UCP gravy train, just like the rest of those hogs at the trough, right up until they got booted. Dubious isn't using his gentle gloves on his typing today, but what would you say to those that say this is just political opportunism? These guys just want to be MLAs for longer than the writing on the wall indicated they would be, and so they're trying to come up with a whole new way to stick around.
Yeah, there's going to be all sorts of different mudslinging that's going to go on, I guess. After the way that things have went down, the lack of transparency, the irresponsible spending, it just became evident that, what would this all be for? Why did I step down as minister? Why did I step up in the House later on and then get kicked out? What's it all for?
There you have it. That from an exclusive right here on Real Talk on the 2nd of July. Now, there's been a development since. The United Conservatives served these two with a cease and desist.
Oh, yeah, for the name.
Saying that, if they were to revive the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta name, it would infringe on the UCP's intellectual property. So the Alberta Party, who obviously saw some momentum, but just not enough, up to about, we'll say the 2019 election-ish, has offered essentially its resources, its membership, its board, et cetera, as another route for this to happen. And so allies of these two MLAs that you heard from, Guthrie and Sinclair, have already joined the Alberta Party board, and the wheels are in motion on that. And the speculation is that by rebranding the Alberta Party to the Progressive Conservatives, it could give this upstart more of a chance to be relevant sooner than later. They're looking at September, as early as September, for these two to be representing, as opposed to independents to be representing the Progressive Conservatives in the Alberta legislature. What they do with that from there remains to be seen. Whether or not this lands with conservatives, with moderates, with the politically homeless in Alberta right now remains to be seen, but that's a story obviously we'll continue to follow.
But no final word on whether they can use the name yet or not?
Well, they're looking into it. So this is like the name change, according with Elections Alberta approval, that's what they need. The name change could be complete by September. This is obviously something that is not going to serve the United Conservatives well in any way.
No.
You're not going to see the premier saying, we welcome more competitive. Like, this is what you see in mayoral races. We'll get to more of this in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see an existing mayoral candidate when a new person declares and they say, we would like to warmly welcome this candidate to the race. We believe that the race and the citizens will benefit by more fulsome and hearty debate and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
That's not the case here. Jason Kenney worked to unite the Progressive Conservatives and the Wild Rose Party because they knew, just like Stephen Harper and Peter MacKay before them, right, when they merged the federal Progressive Conservatives and the Canadian Alliance, that two different dueling or competing conservative entities rarely works well with the vote splitting and how that all goes. So the UC people do everything they can to cock-block this whole move. We'll keep you updated on this story as it develops. Speaking of mayoral races, we want to get to that in just a second. No big deal, but 3 exclusives in a row here on Real Talk. But before we do this, did you have a chance to check out about a week ago our conversation, our feature on Disability Pride Month? This was featuring gold medal Paralympian Carrie Anton, Bean Gill, and Brad Bartko in partnership with Athabasca University. A fantastic conversation on accessibility, inclusion, and some of the things you may not have thought of. If you're a so-called able-bodied person, did you realize that you might be doing a disservice to a person with a disability by offering to open a door for them? I get called to the carpet in the episode. I encourage you to check that out. That was our episode titled Long Ballot Shenanigans Disability Pride Month on the 25th of July, as mentioned, in partnership with Athabasca University. They're Canada's open university, and through the course of that conversation, we were able to talk about some of the inclusion steps that AU is taking to make post-secondary even more accessible to Canadians. That's what AU's all about, that AU advantage. As an online university, Canada's open university, your only commute is to your device. And their world-class accredited online degrees and courses are designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you. That means if you need to help out your parents for a bit, maybe you're that sandwich generation that's looking out for your parents and your kids. Maybe you find yourself facing an illness. Maybe you need a mental health break. Maybe you just want to get out to Costa Rica for 2 months and not think about your MBA or whatever else it is. You determine the pace of your studies at Athabasca University, and that's why tens of thousands of alumni from across Canada report more than a 90% success rate when it comes to satisfaction with their AU experience and job placement in their field of study. They've got the Bachelor of Commerce, the Bachelor of Human Resources and Labor Relations. They've got their post-LPN Bachelor of Nursing. They've got all kinds of programs and courses. You're guaranteed to find a fit. You can learn more about the AU Advantage today by checking out athabascau.ca. Summer is a time where a lot of successful Canadians are going to maybe step out of the office, but you'll still be pausing and reflecting on your career and maybe even more importantly or more timely, your retirement goals. At North Road Investment Council, find them online at northroadic.com. They're working with Canadians that have done just that, built successful careers, and they want to make sure that their wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. That's the next big goal. North Road's typical client has at least $2 million in investable assets and oftentimes is coming from analytical or detail-driven professions. You could be an engineer, maybe an architect. Maybe you're a dentist getting set to sell your practice. If this is resonating with you, the team at North Road Investment Council is wide open to a conversation. You can check out their website again, northroadic.com, and start a conversation with Marshall, Carey, and their team built on clarity, discipline, and true alignment. We also want to show our appreciation for the incredible support of California Closets through the years here on Real Talk. As we talk about 1,000 episodes, I was talking to Cam Johnson at California Closets just the other day. I said it literally wouldn't be possible without you guys. I say that with conviction, and I talk about California Closets with a smile on my face because we were customers of California Closets before we ever worked with them. We had a relatively limited budget at that time in our careers, and we wanted to make sure that our entertainment center and our family's gathering space, our living room, was something we could be proud of, but it had to be something functional. We've got kids, we've got board games and puzzles and toys. We didn't want it all out on display, but we also knew with youngins and dogs that we're hard on our installations. So when they told us that it was guaranteed for life, of course, that was something that we were pretty excited about. I'm happy to tell you that 8 years after it was installed, our California Closets project still looks as beautiful as it did on day one. They can design any installation to fit your space and your budget. You may be going, I don't know if I can afford California Closets. Think again. They've got 4 different levels of design, starting with practical simplicity all the way up to luxury refined. The best move, if you're even curious about a California closet, is to request that free consultation. You can book it today online at californiaclosets.ca.
I understand your point about the premier thinking they own the name because they did merge the two parties.
For people that align with me, and this is kind of funny, human beings, maybe I don't think, and it's not just limited to Canadians, but maybe more in Canada than in the United States, where they typically have 2 choices, right? You're a Democrat or you're a Republican.
Sure.
For the most part,
Red or blue.
right? Or either, or maybe you don't care. But in Canada, we're always trying to figure out where people are in the political spectrum. And when you're doing what we do all the time, which is basically sharing your thoughts unfiltered in front of a microphone, people want to know. So there's a bunch of people out there that think I'm this right-winger. There's a bunch of people out there that think I'm a libtard, and we hear it all the time. We hear it all the time.
Sure.
And I've often talked to people about how I base my politics on my gut instinct. I base my perspectives on common sense, which I think is becoming one of the most overused phrases in politics right now. But you know where I've always felt an apt description of where I land? It is a progressive conservative.
Yeah.
The progressive represents how I feel about things like social programs, the arts, cannabis, marriage equality, and a million other things. And the conservative represents how I feel about fiscal policy, personal taxes, small government, and the like. And so I've always really liked that PC brand. I felt like it fits me, progressive conservative, and I can see why they want it. I also think you're, of course, tapping into a 44-year legacy. You're tapping into the party of Peter Lougheed and Ralph Klein and others, which is the exact reason why Danielle Smith is going to let that fly over her dead body.
So you heard it here first. Ryan's going to vote progressive conservative from now on. But I will say one thing before we move on is just I think Canada's kind of unique, and it's one of the reasons I love this country is that people vote based on what's going on at the time. They don't just dig in all the time. We saw this in the last election.
Yeah.
Bunch of people migrated over to conservative. Bunch of people migrated over to liberal.
Yep.
They took a side, right? Who may have voted NDP before or Green or let's not, maybe not Green, but you know what I mean.
Some people, of course.
People change their opinion based on the times, and I think that's unique to Canada. I think it's a good thing.
I agree with you 100%. You know, we've seen an interesting trend, and I want to let you know, like if you're listening to this from somewhere else in Canada, if you're listening to this from somewhere else in the province of Alberta, we'll continue to cover the stories that are making news and that are relevant to Canadians that are living at home and abroad. Almost 40 countries. We saw downloads from almost 40 countries off our website, ryanjesperson.com last month, which says a lot. We appreciate audience in the Philippines and Thailand, audience in Germany, audience in New Zealand. We appreciate that. But of course, in our home city of Edmonton, we're paying close attention to what's happening in this city's mayoral race because we're guaranteed a new mayor. The incumbent, Amarjeet Sohi, is not running again. And our studio is like 6 blocks from Edmonton's City Hall. Our studio is proudly downtown in the historic Mercer Warehouse. And downtown Edmonton is in everybody's sights, regardless of if you live in the suburbs or elsewhere, as one of the top election issues. We were grateful when Tim Cartmel, the incumbent candidate, decided to choose Real Talk as the platform that he would launch his campaign. This was way back. This is going to shock you when I say the date. It won't, because you already had to look it up and pull the highlight.
But I was surprised.
November 21st. Yeah. This election is on October 20th. This guy launched his campaign 11 months before the election. Obviously, he wanted the head start. He probably wanted to chase away other candidates that might eat his lunch, and that would include other perceived conservative candidates. So as he launched exclusively on Real Talk back on November 21st, here's what he told us about that competition. Let's cut to the chase. You
Yeah.
are perceived to be the conservative option,
Yeah.
and Edmonton's council right now has a bit of a reputation for being a bit of a lefty council.
Sure.
So you are seen as the incumbent, or the incumbent option that would appeal to so-called conservative voters. That's kind of the summary. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a fair summary, and I think that's a fair characterization of how I am viewed. But conservative has different connotations to it, right? Like, I'm fiscally conservative in that I want to see the dollars that we take out of your pocket, the dollars that we take out of the economy, leveraged to their greatest effect. I want to see that when we take a dollar from you and we use it to support the corporation that is the City of Edmonton, you see that dollar at work. And there's too many ways that it isn't. That doesn't mean that I don't support, an effective data-based social services ecosystem. That doesn't mean that I don't support affordable housing. I'm trying to get, quite a significant affordable housing complex, constructed and started in my ward. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in a lot of the things that, others that serve on council believe. But what it does mean is that I want to see it done differently. I want to see a set of priorities. I want to see fiscal management. I want to see us treat dollars like they're other people's dollars. And I just don't see enough of that on this current council.
And I'm not trying to be the old get off my lawn curmudgeon guy, but a lot of people don't see return on the investment. They don't see their services getting better. They see some bungled infrastructure projects. A lot of people assess this to be a pretty big mess, to be honest with you.
It's a big mess. And it's a bit of fun with numbers. You'll see a graphic that comes out from city administration that says it only costs $9.72 for the average taxpayer per day to run the City of Edmonton.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. So when you in 2022, tax revenue was $1.78 billion. With this increase on paper today, this 8.1% increase gives us a 30% increase in 3 years, compounded. And more than that, tax revenue will go up $540 million from 2022 to 2025. Where does $540 million go? Why can't we find $2 million to cut the grass? Why can't we find, another $10 million to shovel the snow? These are core services. We have to get back to running the city.
Okay, so what are you going to say to people that go, Tim Carmel, you are part of the problem. You are currently on council. What about the people in Ward Pahesawin, your ward, that are going, my property taxes are going up under you, Councillor Carmel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I understand that question. I take every one of these things on their merits. Every time we make a decision, every time we vote on something, I'm looking at it on the merits. I'm not looking at it from who's voting for it, who are the other people that support it, that kind of a thing. And none of these things are 100% zero decisions, right? They're 60-40 decisions. But on the big pieces, I have voted against things that are really costing us a lot of money. I voted against many of the projects that are the huge debt service projects.
Give us examples.
LRT. Right, I've not supported the very significant spend, particularly on the West LRT project. I did not support the extension of the South LRT project because those projects are not delivering value for dollars. We can deliver the service levels that those projects would deliver in terms of mass transit with other systems for less money.
That was Tim Carmel joining us on November 21st, eventually, kicking off his campaign on this platform in front of this audience. It hasn't been the smoothest sailing for Tim Carmel in recent weeks. Obviously, Edmonton's infill debate has really taken center stage.
Yeah.
I mean, I just said a few minutes ago, for a lot of people, the state of Edmonton's downtown development, crime downtown is front of mind. If you're living in a neighborhood, maybe one of those more mature neighborhoods, maybe 15, 20 minutes outside of the downtown core, and somebody's just bought the that wartime bungalow next to you on that nice big lot, and they're knocking it down to put in 8 units, that is your election issue. Carmel missing a vote on that one. And of course, his campaign has seen some struggles since. There's still runway. Before this election, and it's not too late for him to salvage his campaign. But it hasn't been the smoothest sailing since.
No, I don't think it's easy for any candidate. We talked about this because there's not a lot of money to spend. Their issues all seem the same. So I don't mind when these things come up. I feel like the infill thing, if things like that get inflamed and we see deeper perspective from each person on how they feel about these issues, like, it's okay. I don't mind if the campaigns become about that, especially because I feel like this is one that they're all very passionate about.
Yeah.
And it is one that I'm not going to say there's drama, but people are split on this. You know, a lot of people, even in our chat every day, people want affordable housing, and they know, you know, single mothers with kids want to live, even if it is in a basement apartment, in a nice neighborhood with a school 2 blocks away and a park across the street. But at the same time, there's 10 cars that have nowhere to go on the street. And
it's going to be 16 different
blue
garbage
bins
and
everywhere.
recycling bins.
And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and this is one where I'll be honest with you, like, and I don't mean, like, I'm going to be straight with you, real talkers. Like, if I feel strongly about something in one direction, you're going to know about it. Same as you guys when you write into the show. Shout out again to our live chat, powered by Park Power. Like, the comments that you share, you understand the nuance. You understand you can change your mind on things. I can argue for density, and I can also argue for preserving the character or the feel of a neighborhood.
Sure.
We've had strong takes from many of you, and we continue to invite your feedback to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Now, every interview with the mayoral candidate, it's going to be different. It's going to differ based on my mood that day. It's going to differ based on their personality. It's going to differ based on their reputation and their voting record. Everybody loves Andrew Knack. Like, everybody loves Andrew Knack. If you find somebody that calls Andrew Knack a prick, they're the prick. I'm confident in saying that. And we were thrilled when Andrew agreed to launch his campaign on Real Talk on the 23rd of May. So Cartmel had about a 6-month head start, but when Amarjeet Sohi confirmed after that federal election result was in that he wasn't running, everybody started buzzing about whether or not Knack was going to run. And I couldn't help but state the obvious. Ask the question that everybody's wondering about. Is Andrew Knack too nice to be mayor?
People don't want us fighting all the time. I think we share common values. If we're going to work on things like affordability and safety and how we're going to manage growth, I've been hearing that come from this provincial government quite regularly. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. And then at the same time, where we do need to stand up and speak up for everyday Edmontonians, you should be able to be passionate about decisions that are being made. We've had 2 UCP MLAs who are no longer UCP MLAs for daring to just ask for transparency. And you know what their reward was? They were kicked out of the party because they didn't show loyalty to the party above all else. That is a system that we cannot have infect our local democracy. This is very much the last stand. When you start attacking the people, that's where it starts to fall apart.
Can you imagine how much it might suck to have a career in an industry or a discipline where being calm, reasonable, and nice is actually seen as detrimental?
Gets you nowhere.
Right? Shout out to Andrew, who's running a strong campaign. I mean, this is a 3-horse race as far as we're concerned. And I know you got to be careful saying stuff like that because another candidate could enter the race, or maybe somebody could surprise us. I mean, Raheem Jaffer is polling better than anybody thought he would. The Nat campaign continuing on with their key points. He is, as he's spinning himself, as he's presenting himself, let me say less cynically, as the mayoral candidate or the mayor that will stand up for everyday Edmontonians. Mm-hmm. But wait, there's a twist. But wait, there's more. And pardon me, I know you're rolling your eyes when I do this, but I'm trying to reiterate a point here. Exclusively on Real Talk, announced first right here just a short time ago on the 21st of July, the return of a familiar face. Michael Walters, one-time counselor, formerly, prior to that, a community league president, an entrepreneur, a marketing and business expert. He says that it's now his time to serve as mayor of Edmonton, and he told us why.
I can work with environmentalists, businesses, large corporations, not-for-profits. I have these relationships and ability to weave their interests together. And what I've heard in this campaign, which is part of my compulsion to come back, is a continuation of divisiveness, referring to business owners as greedy, talking about environmentalists as naive, right? Like everybody has their interests and their concerns. And I think a mayor's job is to respect those, honor those, weave those together into a common ground agenda, and make decisions on behalf of the city.
What's your promise on property taxes?
Yeah, promise and a plan. So you're right. Whether you're a newcomer who's just moved here, who wants to live in a city that provides good services, safety, opportunity, whether you're a longtime business owner who's sort of feeling like you're getting buried under them, or you're a senior who still wants your grandkids to have a cool city to live in, but you're on a fixed income, you can't afford it, or just a regular family struggling with affordability issues. This myth that in order to maintain or improve services, taxes have to go up needs to be dealt with seriously. Whether you've been here for over 100 years or just over 100 days, people come here from around the world because they want to build a life, they want a better future for their kids, they want a place that's interesting, that gives them joy, gives them opportunity. I'm ready to lead our city. I'm passionate about leading our city. There's a vision for Edmonton that matters, which is that we can build a city where people and businesses thrive, and we can build a city that is as beautiful and as enduring as the Northern Lights above us. This is what I want to do, and this is the conversation I want to have with Edmontonians in the next 3 months.
That was Michael Walters exclusively on Real Talk on the 21st of July, which happened to be our 1,000th episode. We appreciate him doing that. When he made that Northern Lights comment, you and I kind of looked at each other. It was like, whoa.
And the city will rejoice in its magnificent under the gazing aurora borealis. Like, it was just, I was like, I saw a flag waving behind him.
Me
too. It was crazy.
Yeah, me too. I wonder why he didn't do the Northern Lights as his color scheme for his campaign. He's going with the Nenshi purple instead. But I mean, he didn't want to steal our color scheme, I guess. That's probably it, our color gradient. His reference to the one, whether you've been here 100 years or 100 days, if you listen to the full interview, which I encourage you to do so, listen to all three. Cartmel, November 21st, Knack, May 23rd, and of course, Michael Walters, July 21st. Walters tells us the story of his great-grandfather, who was tragically killed in a construction accident in Edmonton, working in a trench, which I mean, this is just such a brutal story, collapsed. But he shared how the loss of his great-grandfather, who he obviously never knew, had sort of like formed or shaped his opinion on public service and city building. I thought it was a really great interview. I will say, subsequent conversations since, including one at Highlands Golf Course just a couple of days ago. You know who you are, real talkers that came up to me on the 10th tee box and wanted to talk about that Walters interview. It's really prompting people to rethink where they're going to put their vote, and it's prompting a lot of people to rethink what their election donations are going to look like. Michael Walters doesn't come across as bombastic. He's not the loudest candidate out there, but I do think it's fair to say that he has disrupted where a lot of people think that Edmonton's mayoral race is going to go.
Yeah, I honestly don't know who's going to get elected here.
Me neither.
Because their campaigns are so similar.
Absolutely.
They all want to save money. They all want to make the city better. They all know that, the infill thing is a problem. They all know that safety is a problem. They all want to address all these things. It's going to be really tough to decide where you throw your ballot. And it may just come down to, like you just said, someone who's a little calmer, has a little more character, says things like he did about the Northern Lights, like a little personality glimmer every now and then. It may just come down to a vibe. Yeah.
Or maybe Don Iveson or Stephen Mandel will re-enter the race and throw everything off kilter. Who knows? All right, before we get to the flamethrower, which is one of our favorite, if not our favorite, weekly traditions presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, we also wanted to touch on this. We can't talk about the best of without showcasing an instance of what I think that we can do best, and that is provide a credible, moderated platform for people with very different opinions to debate the issues of the day. And that includes the Alberta government's move to, and I'm going to say it because this is what they're doing, interfere with the books or the selection process of books that are made available in school libraries. I want to credit both of our guests, Alberta's Education Minister, Dr. Dimitrios Nikolidis, who agreed to join us and who agreed to debate Laura Winton. She's the past president of the Library Association of Alberta. This was a heated debate that went down very recently on the 29th of July. I encourage you to check out the entire episode, but here's the meat of it.
Do you support having books and other material that has really graphic depictions of sexual acts available to minor children?
What I support is librarians and educators who have expertise and years of education in this area in understanding the developmental appropriateness of these books. Those are the people that should be making decisions about what is on school shelves, not the government.
We have a responsibility to set standards, guide our education system, establish those standards that they are to achieve.
Survey results from the Alberta government show the majority of respondents do not support the province.
There's different views when it comes to how this should be managed, and a clear expectation from parents that this type of material should not be made available to young minor children.
What's actually happening there is a discussion about consent, telling this story of this sexual encounter and navigating consent with their partner, which is actually quite beautiful and something I certainly want my children to be exposed to at the appropriate age. Pulling out a couple of images does not give you the full breadth and why it would be appropriate. Teenagers are engaging in sexual activity and that it's complicated for them. Award-winning, compassionate portrayals of how that is navigated is incredibly important.
You can convey those messages, communicate those ideas to young children so that they can learn about them, but do it in a way that's appropriate to the age of the reader. You don't need to have a graphic depiction of oral sex or of molestation.
It was a heated one, but again, I credit both of those individuals for articulating their positions on this, and I want to thank all of the Real Talkers that have left comments on our YouTube episode. You've been leaving comments on Spotify, which is great. Thanks to everybody that subscribes there, and of course, you can also send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. In follow-up, different subject matter, but on the subject of consent, I also want to encourage people, here we're talking about episodes you may have missed. We know your summers are busy. The very next day, yesterday, we're talking to you on August 1st. It was the 31st of July. The CEO of the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton, Mary Jane James, and Kristen Rayworth, who's a sexual violence survivor. She's an advocate. She was a spokesperson for Alberta's I Believe You campaign. They gave us their take on the Hockey Canada trial, the verdict, and what it says about Canada. And a big part about that, you'll see it in our short from that day. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll find it there. Also, thanks to everybody that follows us on TikTok, Instagram, and the other social media platforms at Real Talk RJ on what is consent. What does consent look like? Mary Jane says to us, don't obsess on the definition. And she goes on from there. That was our episode on the 31st of July, which I highly recommend. Honestly, Johnny, I feel like yesterday's episode, it was July 31st, is honestly one of the most important ones that we've ever done, certainly in the past few years.
And that's kind of why we saved it for the end of the week, because we knew we didn't want to jump on anything. Yeah. People were very fired up when this decision came down. They're still fired up. They're going to be fired up for a while. And it's going to be something everyone follows. And, it's probably their fault that this is going to follow them, but these 5 players are going to be closely watched to see what they do, whether they go over to Europe and play, whether some of them make their way back into the NHL if that happens, or whether they go on to live lives doing something else, or whether they, who knows, maybe they do complete 180s and help other people involved with the subject we're talking about. But I think this story is going to continue for a long time. Well,
and I know, and a lot of people, you look at, you say, when you Google someone's name, I mean, you Google these players' name, that's all you're going to have for the first 30 pages.
It's a paragraph on Wikipedia for the rest of their lives.
And I thought that it was also good, and I appreciated, we had our Real Talk live chat chiming in on this. We had Mary Jane and Kristen talking about it, whether or not these players deserve another shot at the National Hockey League. The NHLPA, the Players Association, says absolutely. The NHL says it's not so sure. The NHLPA is saying, well, in the collective bargaining agreement, they should be entitled to the opportunity to return. The question is, would there be, and this is the first question, an appetite from any NHL team to bring them on? You can check out that episode, the 31st of July, if you want to hear that conversation in its entirety. And always, we're curious to hear from you, to let we want you to let us know basically what you think about what you're hearing. That's kind of the whole point of us doing this. These conversations happen with the support of amazing partners like our friends at Solar by Kubi. Man, the sun has been just pounding down lately, which is beautiful. We deserve it after a few weeks of rain. Doesn't it feel like that? And of course, it's a perfect time to consider the option of opening your power bill and not flinching. Imagine that. That's what solar can do. By producing your own power, you can save between 20 to 100%, 100% of your energy costs, your electricity costs in the summer, of course, and most systems are paying for themselves in 5 to 10 years. Gone are the days of unaffordable solar. Plus, with this thing called net metering, you can actually earn credits for the extra power that you produce in the summer, and then you can use those funds to help cut your winter bills. Sometimes those are a real slap in the face. If that sounds like something you'd want to explore, if you've been considering installing solar and you want to take that next step, you got nothing to lose by checking out kuby.ca/solar. That's kuby.ca/solar for a free quote and more information. Kuby is solar simplified and people powered. Our shout out to them for 10 years in business at Kuby Renewable Energy. We're also such big fans of UCAN Youth Services. This is a non-profit charitable organization based out of Edmonton that's dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. They do that through several different programs, including their Relentless outreach. This is the 12 to 17-year-olds that are interacting with police on a regular basis. UCAN's Youth Services Relentless outreach workers stop at nothing to reach out to these young people and empower them in making positive, healthy, and life-changing decisions. And they've got some exciting things coming, including a brand new location, but that means the launch of a capital campaign. They got to find a way to pay for it all. Check out their website, ucan.ca, to learn more about the return on investment with UCAN. And please, if you're able, consider making a donation today. You can visit them online at ucan.ca. Hey, John, I've noticed that Real Talk Ryan Jesperson t-shirt you're wearing. Did you pick that up by visiting ryanjesperson.com/merch?
I did. I got a discount. It was 3% discount for working here. No,
3% staff discount.
But yeah, you should always head, and I'll just let's throw the little banner up. Let's show people the website. But
we love it.
We've got mugs.
I love seeing it. That's a good color on you, buddy.
And look at this.
Yeah, we heard from
look at
your
everything.
mug. We got it all. And by the way, if you check out again ryanjesperson.com/merch, this is just a shameless plug. You'll also see Relay, our company. This is Relay's general manager, Katie Cook-Chivers, that's featured. She's rocking our shirt, our snapback caps, our mugs, and more. Thanks to everybody that finds unique and different ways to support the show. We got a new merch drop coming soon, and we will keep you posted on that. We wrap every week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, by giving you the floor. These are your hottest takes. You got something to say. You're all fired up. Well, send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com or leave us a comment on YouTube. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Rebecca writes in and says, she says, okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alberta government, for telling me what's appropriate for my children to read. Without your gross overreach, my children and I may have made decisions with our own brains to read books that, appeal to us, inform us, challenge us, teach us. Fortunately, with the UCP's overreach, we'll be safe in our little bubble of, if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Thank you again so much. That from Rebecca in Spruce Grove. What about this one from Brandon, who says, okay, so here's my idea. The education minister has his undies in a knot because of graphic descriptions or depictions of sexual acts. Well, what about instead of banning the books that all the libraries, why don't they just grab a big, thick, phallic Sharpie and color over the specific. I don't know why you had to include phallic in there, but it sort of helped hammer down the point, didn't it? I don't get to say phallic every day, so I appreciate that from Brandon. What is it? What did they say about Biden? Thanks, Brandon. Is that the one? Anyway, he says, why not just color over and censor the specific images in question? Problem solved. He says, but not really, because we all know that these books are not being banned because of the sexual depictions, but because they have LGBT themes. Brandon says, this is absolutely pathetic. That from Brandon. How about this one from BDP, who listened to our episode on the 31st of July with Mary Jane and Kristen talking about the Hockey Canada verdict. BDP says, real talk, I have been having these conversations with my male friends who have daughters. Many of them are now teenagers or in their early 20s. He says, I'm seriously trying, much like you, Jespo, but with less success, I'm sure, to have these uncomfortable conversations with the boys, with the fellas. And I hope that permits me to say that I'm putting in the work, even if I'm not helping to produce the results that we all want. BDP says, I may not like your show, Ryan, or everything I hear on it, but I've always supported the need for it to exist and be heard. Says, I can always change the channel if I wish to, but on the 31st of July, I'm glad I didn't. BDP says, so for all the times I may come across as negative toward the show or topics, this one I obviously cannot and will not. You're putting in the work, and I see it plain as day, and that deserves applause from us all. I will say this, BDP, I don't care whether you agree or disagree with me. The fact that you engage with the show means the world to us. We also heard from Alberta Ganger following that episode, who says your July 31st discussion about the Hockey Canada verdict with Mary Jane James, Kristen Rayworth, broke my heart and made me incredibly fucking angry. She says, regarding budget cuts targeting the sexual assault center of Edmonton, what is wrong with this provincial government? What is wrong with the premier and cabinet? These actions are going to harm society. We're going back to like the 1950s with the lack of education on sex ed and relationships. How about this one from Rob in Jasper? Had a very special edition of the show on the 24th of July, marking 1 year since. Talking to almost 10 different stakeholders. Rob says, Johnny, you're going to love this one. Opens his email by saying, Jespo, any man that would dare call political staffers chimpanzees is somebody I need to know. Incidentally, he says, incidentally, that's an insult to chimpanzees everywhere. I immediately was like, well, we're reading Rob's email on the show. Rob says, Rob here in Jasper, all is reasonably well for me, at least considering our situation. My place survived and I didn't get shot for looting. He says, I live in Stone Mountain on the far west edge of town. Maximum effort went into saving our places. He says the fire jumped over and around our buildings before destroying the west end. He says, I'm a cab driver and I saw firsthand the heroism of our frontline troops. All other cabbies abandoned their vehicles and ran for it, and I don't blame them. He says the merit of all our crews and responders is beyond reproach. They were asked for the impossible. Not one man or woman turned us down. They risked everything for our town. He says I stopped in at the fire hall at 11:30 on the big night to see if there was anything I could do. I stood there for like 30 seconds to take it all in. He says it was like right out of a Bruce Willis movie. By the way, shout out to Bruce Willis. Oh man, it's tough to watch that guy's scenario right now. His family says, this is Jespo, not Rob. Back to his email in a second. His family says he doesn't even remember that he was a famous actor.
I know.
Says he can't even figure out why paparazzi's following him around.
Very
so
sad,
sad to
very
see.
sad.
Oh man, let's support Alzheimer's research. Back to Rob in Jasper. He says it was like a Bruce Willis movie. My neighbor, who's Lieutenant Ashley Chorley, was barking out orders. All of this with her 2-month-old baby having been evacuated to Valemont. He says, I'm so proud to call these men and women friends. These are memories I will take to my grave. Says it brings up an old joke. How do you know there's a Jasperite in the bar? They'll tell you. He says, I'll now be the first to stand up and announce that I'm from Jasper and I defend these men and women. He says, but to the events of 2 weeks ago, an outside anti-conservative consultant was hired for a 1-year review of the fire. They interviewed our crews and they came up with an accusatory finger-pointing report at Madam Premier for the fire. He says, rightfully, Danielle Smith demands an apology for this report, which makes all of us in Jasper look like bigoted, hateful, intolerant liberals. Rob says, I want Danielle Smith to know she has friends and supporters here in J-Town and to not forsake us over the actions of a few. Our fire crews are not allowed to speak out over this. I have no such restrictions. He says, I will point out, not all liberals, hashtag not all liberals, are of this ilk. There are just some who are patriotic and proud as any conservative, some of whom are friends and relatives of mine. That from Rob, sending a message to the Premier through this show. Not the first time, not the last. And this one from R.A., who says, Alberta, starting with the Premier's office, needs to cancel the appearance of Trump sycophant and Christian singer Sean Fucht. I hadn't heard of him before all this controversy.
Mm-hmm.
All this is doing, trying to ban him from everywhere. By the way, this is Jespo talking, back to RA in a second. All it's doing is helping him. All it's doing is getting
100%.
more people to Google him, more people to listen to his music, more people to check out his social media. Regardless, RA says we need to cancel his appearance at the Alberta Legislature grounds. It is not appropriate to be holding a spiritual revival meeting on government property. This guy supports and promotes the idea of theocracy based on the idea that Christians are better than everybody else, making it doubly inappropriate for him to be at a government venue. Jespo here, every faith group thinks that they're destined for something better than everybody else. Back to the email. Religion and politics shouldn't mix, and that's partly to protect the church from being corrupted by power seekers. And this guy is in that category. If you look at the wealth he's amassing for himself while declaring he's not receiving contributions, and the people he's choosing to cozy up to, are you kidding me? Do the right thing, says RA, and cancel his appearance. Every single flamethrower is a real email or YouTube comment. Submit it to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can find us on Spotify too, and it all happens with the incredible support of the DQs in Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. When you stop in for Johnny, they've got Superman blizzards. When you stop in for a Superman blizzard, woo! This weekend in a flamethrower signature stack burger, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. We're going to be taking Monday off. Enjoy your August long. We're back at it Tuesday morning. We will see you next Tuesday.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.